And they did a series of stories for Batman at this time period in these 90s time period. And this is all well, as you can see, the edition here is Haunted Night, and I'm going to open this up and show it to you in a little bit. There are 3 actual story arcs in this edition, so all of this is a precursor to the Long Halloween and then Dark Victory and all that stuff that they wrote. But there are 3 really solid. Well, I'll show you now. There are 3 really solid stories in here, and I was going to cover this whole edition in one video, but I think I'm going to actually give each story in here its own due. So. First of all, I just love the fact that Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are billed here. They're credited as the storytellers, and then you have the letterer, and the colorist, and everything. And I love that, because not every writer and artist are worthy of being billed at the same time there as storytellers. Sadly, now this is the way that comic books should work. They should work with. The medium should be a story. The story should be told in equal parts, visual and with the words. And that's the nature of comic books. That's when the medium works best. Too many times you open a comic book and they're just 1,000 panels per page, all of these huge dialogue boxes, and really, I mean, what's the point of the art at all? It's just an illustrated story, basically. It's not a comic book. It's not really doing what a comic book should. So, but that's not the case with these collaborations by Loeb and Sale. So I love that they're both billed as the storytellers. Archie Goodwin, the editor for this is the Legends of the Night run. Maybe I should explain that first. So Legends of the Night was a big deal, and it's one of my favorite Batman runs. After Batman 89, you see it made. And after that time, of course, if you lived through that period, Batmania sweeping the nation, so DC Comics wanted to capitalize on it and create another Batman title. They had Batman, they had Detective Comics. They ended up creating Legends of the Dark Knight, excuse me. And this is the Batman title that was created, and it's, as you can see, I've got a collector's edition here of this issue number 1, and it's the first solo Batman book since 1940. And to make it even sweeter, Denny O'Neil starts writing the title from the very beginning. And this is the first book, The Shaman. Wonderful story arc, Shaman. I've got the collected edition elsewhere, but I love having this this special collector's edition cover and everything. I'm really proud of this one, actually. So I think the art's great there. And what Legends of the Night did was it wasn't out of continuity. It's not like an Elseworlds or anything like that. But the point behind the Legends of the Night titles is that it goes back to tell stories earlier on in Batman's continuity in his life. So before he ever met Robin, when he's still, these are the origin story type things. And this was a point in Batman continuity where he's been adult Batman for a long time. Tim Drake was just becoming Robin around this time-ish, just to give you sort of a comparison point there. So in this edition, these are 3 different specials. Each special was 3 to 4 issues long. The first one I'm talking about here is 3 issues long. I think the rest of them were as well. But 3 issue long story arcs within the Legends of the Night run, all Halloween specials. And the first one they had the idea for was Fears, and Scarecrow is the big baddie in this one. And it's a great story. Gorgeous story. First, I'd like to, well, maybe I'll come back to that. Let me talk about the story first, and then I'll kind of, in my wrap-up, I'll give the great Halloween insights that I think this story gives us, and Batman insights, because it's just so great. The story is wonderful. It's a 3-issue story arc with Scarecrow, and it takes place over a Halloween weekend. And I won't give anything away because this is really worth your time. It truly is. But the idea is that it's a Halloween weekend. Scarecrow is going around targeting power stations, knocking out power, and then having people loot and stuff like that. So Batman is searching for the Scarecrow, trying to hunt him down. In the process, and this all happens in the first 2 pages, so I'm not giving anything away, but in the process, Batman ingests a very large sum of the Scarecrow toxin, the fear toxin, and it's really a fascinating story of how Batman's fears play out through the story arc, and what he learns about himself and how he conquers him and everything like that. But just look at that art. Man, I love Tim Sale's art. I've heard some people say they're not a fan of Tim Sale, and I understand if you're just not a fan of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not idealized. It's oh man, I feel like an idiot right now. It's one of those words that I know. It's expressionist art. It's highly characterized, highly There's a word I'm looking for. It's on the tip of my tongue, but maybe I'll think of it later. But anyway, he's not really looking for realism. He is drawing these characters in ways, exaggerated ways, caricature ways, sort of. But he's showing elements of each character in their design. So, for example, later on when we get to the Joker, Joker has this broad, broken, clownish smile it's way too big on a mouth for any human to have. But the Joker's got that. Another thing about Tim Sale's art is that he's not afraid at all to do these huge 2-page spreads. He'll do even 1-page spread, or the panels on his page are never, you never have more than about 4 panels on a Tim Sale page as a rule. I know right now I'm just opened up to one where he's got more than 4 panels, but still there are large sweeping panels. He's not one to cram all these small little panels, you know, into the frame. And that's I don't know how much. Well, I know it's something about him and Jeff Loeb's collaborations together. But even the other Loeb's Tim Sale stories I've looked at, this is just part of his style, which I think is wonderful because you could frame so many of these great pieces and just put them on the wall. I love Tim Sale's work. And they're very much, they've got this notion of Batman being a film noir type of detective hero, and I love that. If you had seen my recent Batman video, that's really who Batman should be, the gothic detective. I love that take. I love that visual representation, the nice long ears. I just love that. We'll talk about the Scarecrow in a second. But yeah, so I won't say too much about that film noir aspect because I'll go into that a lot for the Long Halloween. But let's talk about the Scarecrow in this. Loeb and Sale's Scarecrow is a little bit different kind of a take. I know modern renditions of the Scarecrow really try to make him extremely dark and torturous and stuff like that. And he is a serious, threatening villain in this book, absolutely. But you see that, you know, he's wearing a straw hat. He's really dressed like a scarecrow. And he even recites nursery rhymes, like Mother Goose nursery rhymes in all of these Loeb and Sale books. And at first I thought, what is, you know, didn't quite know what to make of it at first because I thought, well, that's just making him a little too much like the Mad Hatter or something like that, because the Mad Hatter's always quoting Alice in Wonderland. But it's really a great touch once I realized what he's doing. He's quoting these nursery rhymes. Often he uses the nursery rhymes or talks about the fairy tales that have a very dark original version that we don't necessarily tell our children anymore. But, you know, like Three Blind Mice and chopping off the tails and the woman who lived in the shoe beating her children soundly and all that kind of stuff. That, you know, rhymes we don't necessarily tell children anymore, but that's a great thing for his character to do because he's all about the fears behind the surface. And he's dressed as a scarecrow. A scarecrow is not something that you should be scared of. They scare crows. We logically know there's nothing to fear from a scarecrow, but with his fear toxin, there's really quite a bit to fear from Jonathan Crane. He is somebody that is going to get into your deepest fears and really psychologically torture you horribly. So I think the idea of him reciting these nursery rhymes and such that have this darker secret behind them is a perfect touch for his character. So I love that. And that's the real crux of this. Batman, Scarecrow is supposed to be a character, well, really any villain for any hero, period, but especially for Batman's. If they're done well, they should reflect some aspect of the hero. And Batman's characters do this brilliantly, right? So Batman is 100% self-control and order and justice. And the Joker's total chaos, you know, so a complete mirror flip. And Two-Face, for example. Two-Face is a divided psyche. Two-Face is somebody who's got these two parts to his life, and that's Batman as well, Bruce Wayne and Batman, and having to reconcile those two. For Scarecrow, let me just read it here, because they call attention to it. So he calls himself, this is Batman's inner monologue there. He calls himself Scarecrow, psychologist turned psychopath. He preys on the innocent and instills them with fear. When I choose to wear my costume, it was to prey upon the criminals and instill them with fear. The irony is not lost on me. So that's a great, thing to even just draw that conclusion at the beginning of the story, because that is what Scarecrow, when done well, what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to show Batman a darker version of fear and provide Batman with a fear or second guessing his choice in life and the effectiveness or the rightness of what he does. That's a good Scarecrow story. And I love the fact that even the the bat signal, and they show this later, and there's a, I don't want to show you too much of the art towards the end of the story arc because I don't want to give it away, but here's a jack-o'-lantern that has the same effect. So this is the bat signal, right? The bat, but he's got eyes on top of it, and that then the bat signal becomes the ragged scarecrow grin, and that's done quite often, and that's a great visual symbol of what the scarecrow brings out in Batman, what kind of twisted version of Batman's virtues the scarecrow is, and how his stories can really reflect and explore some of those great passages. I love that. Great stuff. I want to read this too because this brings everything, wraps it up for us. I think this is Archie Goodwin's forward to the story, to all three of them, where he's talking about how they all three came about. And I just want to read you the first little paragraph, how Archie starts it out. He says, "On Halloween night in 1944, when I was 7 years old, I hammered the front door of a house on my block, and in my best goblin voice yelled, 'Trick or treat!' Suddenly the door flew open, and an apparent madman was waving a rifle in my face, screaming he was going to shoot me for trespassing. Too frightened to run, I burst into tears. The madman looked startled. He stopped screaming and showed me that his rifle was empty. This was all just a little joke to scare trick-or-treaters. He called his wife. Large quantities of candy and apologies were heaped upon me. I walked away from their porch with drying eyes and rich in goodies, but my knees shook for the rest of the night. Halloween, harmless enough, yet under the giggly thrill of pretend scares, it seems to also have the sinister potential to somehow turn real, to somehow push us onto a roller coaster ride of fears and emotions we weren't prepared to face, but suddenly have to. A queasy experience for me as a 7-year-old, but one loaded with possibilities when you apply it to the already dark and complex character like Batman. 3 of the best such applications are collected in this volume. They are written by Jeff Loeb, illustrated by Tim Sale, and so forth and so on. And so that's the fun of Halloween we've been talking about. It's a safe, culturally accepted way to explore these fears, but there's also depending on how you celebrate Halloween, going to haunt houses and stuff like that, haunted houses and stuff. There's a little bit of you're tempting fate, and in the back of your mind there's the what if it is real? What if it is real? But there's that thin veil when you get to Halloween, and depending on if you really get into the celebration, the veil gets very thin between the safe little Halloween and the danger that's really there, and that's a thrill to that. It's a thrill to our psyche. And Batman, I think that's one of the reasons why he's so popular, because Batman is a hero. He's a superhero, right? When done well, not like the Psycho Snyder films, he's not killing and torturing people. He's supposed to be a hero. He's supposed to be somebody who saves lives. He's all about justice. But there's also a darkness to his character. He's the Dark Knight, and he's he uses fear in his heroics. And so there's a danger to him, and I think that's one of the elements that appeals to us so much and why he's such a popular icon in the culture. So I don't want to say too much about this and go too much farther, because we do have 2 more stories that we're going to look at eventually this month in the Haunted Night collection, and then of course we'll look at the Long Halloween and some other